Hi students, welcome to lesson 10 on society, concept, types and theories, part B. In part A, we have already discussed about what is concept of society, characteristics of society, and we have also discussed in detail about characteristics of rural and tribal society. In part B, we are going to discuss about urban society and theories of society. Urban society. According to Merriam-Webster dictionary, urban society can be defined as a society that is typical of modern industrial civilization and heterogeneous in cultural tradition, that emphasizes secular values and that is individualized rather than integrated, contrasted with folk society. The important characteristics of urban community are size and density. The size of an urban community is much larger than that of a rural community. It is highly dense, big and heterogeneous society. Importance to secondary relations is part of urban society. Face-to-face or intimate relations is not observed among the urban people. Urban community is marked by secondary relations, with mass communication being significant aspect of urban community. Anonymity and individualism are considered significant aspects of urban society. As Bogardas observes, the urban groups have a reputation for namelessness. By virtue of its size and population, the urban community is not a primary group. There is greater individualism with more focus on one's own welfare. Secondary and formal means of control. Informal means of social control are not very effective and behavior is regulated through specialized agencies like law, legislation, police, court, etc. Social control in urban community is essentially formal in nature. Family and marriage. Nuclear families are more popular in urban areas. In case of urban community, there is preponderance of love marriages and intercaste marriages. One also comes across a greater number of divorces. There is limited role of family in spouse selection. Urban occupations. In the urban areas, the major occupations are industrial, administrative and professional in nature. Large scale division of labor and occupational specialization is also present. The urban social structure is very interesting. In the words of Bogardas, class extremes characterize the city. A town and a city house the richest as well as the poorest of people. In a city, the slums of the poor exist alongside the palatial bungalows of the rich amidst the apartments of the middle class members. George Simmel held that the social structure of urban communities is based on interest groups. Voluntary associations and secondary groups are important. The network of social contact is wider in city than in the countryside. The city life is characterized by predominance of secondary contacts, impersonal, casual and short-lived relations, making urban community more complex. Social heterogeneity. Urban community symbolizes cultural heterogeneity. The cities are characterized by diverse peoples, races and cultures. There is great multiplicity in regard to the food habits, dress habits, living conditions, religious beliefs, cultural outlook, customs and traditions of the urbanites. Social distance. Social distance refers to the level of acceptance people have of others outside of their own social group or class. Social distance is the result of anonymity and heterogeneity. Most of one's routine social contacts in a town or city are impersonal and segmentary in character. In the urban community, social responses are incomplete and half-hearted. Social mobility. The most important feature of urban community is its social mobility. In urban areas, the social status of an individual is determined not by heredity or birth, but by his merit, intelligence and perseverance. Urbanity and mobility are positively correlated. Large scale social mobility, that is, movement of people from one strata to another, both occupational and geographical mobility is present in urban community. The individual status is determined by his or her achievement. Norm and social role conflict. The urban community is characterized by norm and social role conflict. Role conflict happens when there are contradictions between different roles that a person takes on or plays in their everyday life. Factors such as size, density and heterogeneity of the population, extreme occupational specialization and the class structure prevalent in the urban context lead to such a state of affairs. In the absence of uniform and fixed social norms, individuals or groups often seek divergent ends. Rapid social and cultural change is a significant character of urban society. The importance attached to traditional or sacred elements has been relegated to the background. The benefits of urban life have effected changes in respect of norms, ideologies and behavior patterns. Voluntary associations. The urban community is characterized by impersonal, mechanical and formal social contacts among the people. There is a strong desire for developing genuine social relationships to satisfy emotional warmth and sense of security. They form associations, clubs, societies and other secondary groups. Secularization of outlook. In cities, ritual and kinship obligations are diluted. Caste and community considerations yield to economic logic. This results in secularization of outlook. Spatial segregation. Urban communities are spatially segregated according to their functions and activities performed. Segregation can be also of groups, where there is separation of groups of people with differing characteristics like caste, class, race, ethnicity, often taken to connote a condition of inequality. Theories of origin of society. Several theories and perspectives have been developed to elaborate on origin of society. They explain how society influences people and vice versa. Each perspective uniquely conceptualizes society, social forces and human behavior. Social contract theory. The social contract theory throws light on the origin of the society. According to this theory, all men are born free and equal. Society came into existence because of the agreement entered into by the individuals. The classical representatives of this school of thought are Thomas Hobbes, John Locke and Rousseau. Thomas Hobbes, English philosopher, was of the opinion that society came into being as a means for the protection of men against the consequences of their own nature. Hobbes, in his book Leviathan, published in 1651, has made it clear that man found nothing but grief in the company of his fellows. Since the conditions in the state of nature were intolerable and men longed for peace, the people entered into a kind of social contract to ensure for themselves security and certainty of life and property. John Locke. John Locke, British philosopher, believed that man in the state of nature was enjoying an ideal liberty free from all sorts of rules and regulations. The state of nature was a state of peace, goodwill, mutual assistance and preservation. But there was no recognized system of law and justice. To gain certainty and security, men made a contract to enter into civil society or the state. This contract Locke called social contract. The contract was for limited and specific purposes, and what was given up or surrendered to the whole community and not to a man or to an assembly of men. According to Locke, the social contract later on contributed to the governmental control. Jean-Jacques Rousseau. Rousseau, the French writer of the 18th century, in his famous book The Social Contract 1762 published, wrote that man in the state of nature was a noble savage who led a life of primitive simplicity and relaxing happiness. He was independent, contented, self-sufficient, healthy, fearless and good. It was only primitive instinct and sympathy which united him with others. Man enjoyed a pure, unsophisticated, innocent life of perfect freedom and equality in the state of nature. But these conditions did not last long. Population increased, simplicity and relaxing happiness disappeared. Families were established, institution of property emerged, and human equality was ended. Man began to think in terms of mine and yours. Organismic theory of society. This theory conceives society as a biological system, a greater organism, alike in its structure and its functions. This theory dates back to Plato and Aristotle. Plato divided society into three classes of rulers, the warriors and artisans, based upon the three faculties of the human soul, that is wisdom, courage and desire. Aristotle drew a comparison between the symmetry of the state and symmetry of the body and firmly held that the individual is an intrinsic part of society. English social philosopher Herbert Spencer has been the chief proponent of organismic theory. He said that society is an organism and it does not differ in essential principle from other biological organisms. The attributes of an organism and the society, he maintained, are similar. Both exhibit the same process of development. The animal and social bodies begin as germs, all similar and simple in structure. As they grow and develop, they become unlike and complex in structure. Their process of development is the same, both moving from similarity and simplicity to dissimilarity and complexity. As society evolves and grows in complexity, division of labor follows. In each case, there is mutual dependence of parts. Spencer gives striking structural analogies between society and organism. He compares the sustaining system of human body comprising of mouth, stomach, intestines. 2. Farms and industries of society. He compares the distributing system of human body comprising of blood vessels, heart, to transport, communication, railways, bankers, etc. of society. He compares the regulating system of human body comprising of nerves, motor mechanism, to government, priests, rulers, etc. of society. Spencer indicates that society resembles an organism and also there are differences between them. Sociologists employ three primary theoretical perspectives: the symbolic interactionist perspective, the functionalist perspective, and the conflict perspective. The functionalist perspective. According to the functionalist perspective, also called as functionalism, each aspect of society is interdependent and contributes to society's functioning as a whole. Functionalists believe that society is held together by social consensus or cohesion in which members of the society agree upon and work together to achieve what is best for society as a whole. Emile Durkheim suggested that social consensus takes one of two forms. Firstly, mechanical solidarity is a form of social cohesion that arises when people in a society maintain similar values and beliefs and engages in similar types of work. Mechanical solidarity most commonly occurs in traditional and simple societies. Secondly, in contrast, the organic solidarity is a form of social cohesion that arises when the people in society are interdependent but hold to varying values and beliefs and engage in varying types of work. Organic solidarity most commonly occurs in industrialized and complex societies. American functionalist and sociologist Robert Merton divides human functions into two types: manifest functions and latent functions. Manifest functions are intentional and obvious, while latent functions are unintentional and not obvious. A sociological approach in functionalism is the consideration of the relationship between the functions of smaller parts and the functions of the whole. Functionalism has received criticism for neglecting the negative functions of an event. Functionalism does not encourage people to take an active role in changing their social environment even when such change may benefit them. Instead, functionalism sees active social change as undesirable because the various parts of society will compensate naturally for any problems that may arise. The conflict perspective. While functionalist perspective focuses on the positive aspects of society that contribute to its stability, the conflict perspective focuses on the negative, conflicted and ever-changing nature of society. Unlike functionalists who defend the status quo, avoid social change and believe people cooperate to effect social order, conflict theories challenge the status quo, encourage social change even when this means social revolution. It believes rich and powerful capitalists force social order on the proletariat, which is the working class. The conflict perspective derives from the ideas of Karl Marx, who believed society is a dynamic entity constantly undergoing change driven by class conflict. whereas functionalism understands society as a complex system striving for equilibrium. The conflict perspective views social life as competition. According to the conflict perspective, society is made up of individuals competing for limited resources like money, leisure, sexual partners, etc. Competition over scarce resources is at the heart of all social relationships. C. Wright Mills, American sociologist, is known as the founder of modern conflict theory. In his work, he believes social structures are created because of conflict between differing interests. People are then impacted by the creation of social structures, and the usual result is a differential of power between the elite and the others. While functionalism emphasizes stability, conflict theory emphasizes change. According to the conflict perspective, society is constantly in conflict over resources, and that conflict drives social change. Critics of conflict perspective point to its overly negative view of society. The theory ultimately attributes humanitarian efforts, altruism, democracy, civil rights and other positive aspects of society to capitalistic designs to control the masses, not to inherent interest in preserving society and social order. The symbolic interactionist perspective. The symbolic interactionist perspective considers the symbols and details of everyday life, what these symbols mean and how people interact with each other. The American philosopher George Herbert Mead introduced this perspective to American sociology in the 1920s. Herbert Blumer, American sociologist, coined the word. According to symbolic interactionist perspective, people attach meanings to the symbols and then they act according to their subjective interpretation of these symbols. Verbal conversations in which spoken words serve as predominant symbols make this subjective interpretation especially evident. The words have a certain meaning for the sender, and during effective communication, they hopefully have the same meaning for the receiver. The words require intention and interpretation. Conversation is an interaction of symbols between individuals who constantly interpret the world around them. Thus, symbolic interactionists give serious thought to how people act, how they seek to determine what meanings individuals assign to their own actions and symbols as well as to those of others. Critics claim that symbolic interactionism neglects the macro level of social interpretation, which is the big picture. The perspective also receives criticism for slighting the influence of social forces and institutions on individual interactions. Conclusion. There is strong relationship between the individual and society. Society not only controls our movements but shapes our identity, our thought and our emotions. The structures of society become the structures of our own consciousness. Society does not stop at the surface of our skins. We are entrapped by our own social nature. Society is external to ourselves. It encompasses our entire life. The institutions of society pattern our actions and even shape our expectations. Individuals are part of society not only in space but also in time. Our society is a historical entity that extends beyond the temporary life of any individual. Society is a collection of interacting individuals sharing the same way of life and living in the same territory. The building blocks of societies are statuses, roles, groups, and institutions. Social control is important for the society. Culture is inherent part of any society, and because of this only every society is unique. Tribal, rural and urban societies are different types of societies. Sociologists analyze social phenomena at different levels and from different perspectives. Functionalists believe that society is held together by social consensus or cohesion in which members of the society agree upon and work together to achieve what is best for society as a whole. The conflict perspective believed society is a dynamic entity constantly undergoing change driven by class conflict. According to the symbolic interactionist perspective, people attach meanings to symbols and then they act according to their subjective interpretation of these symbols. According to social contract theory, all men are born free and equal. Organismic theory conceives society as a biological system, a greater organism, alike in its structure and its functions. This theory can even be dated back to Plato and Aristotle. English social philosopher Herbert Spencer has been the chief exponent of organismic theory.